Patrick has spent decades in the plumbing industry handling everything from service work to engineering and even management, but wasn't feeling fulfilled.
A very good friend of mine who's been a great mentor in my life was a small-time plumbing contractor. And he said, Patrick, you got bags under your eyes. You're killing yourself. You can't keep doing this. And I said, well, what's the solution? And he said, come work for me.
One day, his buddy Greg called him and, in his words, sold him on the plan to grow a nearly $7 million plumbing business in year one. Listen in. Patrick, you have been in the plumbing business for a few years, but I want to go way back before then.
Yeah.
What was your first job?
So my first job, I was working 2 dead-end jobs, right? And I was roofing in the early morning hours, right? And then I was working at this it was kind of like an Amazon, long before Amazon was around, like a big warehouse.
Or what do you mean?
Yeah, just filling orders at a warehouse, right? A big shipping warehouse.
For a teenager?
Yeah, I was a young man, teenage years, and I held those jobs for quite a long time, right? And put myself through. I was trying to put myself through college while doing both those jobs, and I had my first child when I was 19, so I was a baby having babies, and it was things were rough.
Well, it makes you grow up in a hurry. You probably realize like where your responsibilities have to lie, things like that. Did you grow up in California?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right where you are now, Sacramento area, plus or minus?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Been out here for a lot of years. So Sacramento and a little bit of Southern California, but mostly Sacramento area.
You're 19 years old. You have a baby. Like I said, it makes you grow up in a hurry. Are you still in the warehouse roofing job then? How do you eventually get into plumbing?
So that's where I was. And what happened was I was going nowhere fast. I was trying to go through college while working both these dead end jobs and raising my daughter and being a good husband and all these things. And it was just going nowhere fast. I was treading water, I could barely stay afloat. And a very good friend of mine, who's been a great mentor in my life, was a small-time plumbing contractor. And he said, Patrick, you got bags under your eyes. You're killing yourself, right? You can't keep doing this. And I said, well, what's the solution? And he said, come work for me. I'm going to teach you.
What year is
This
this?
is
ballpark.
Gosh, 99, 90, 2000.
So 25 years ago.
Yeah. So he actually gave me a choice, right? He said, my cousin's an electrical contractor. I'm a plumbing contractor. Come learn a trade. We'll work around your school schedule. Your family won't want for anything. And I said, great. Which one pays more? So that's all I cared about at the time. I just wanted to cover the bills, cover my tuition, right? Get ahead in life. And he said, they're both the best paying trades, right? And I said, well, which one's better? And he said, listen, you can get zapped or you can get poo-poo on your hand. And I said, I can take a shower, right? And poof, I was a plumber. And that's where I've been ever since.
Well, you interesting because you were in college at the time, you said. Were you of that mentality, the 25-year-old mentality that everyone kind of had back then, where the only way you're going to get a good job is if you go to college?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd fully subscribed to that. And that wasn't any failing on my parents. They were great people. They encouraged me to be whatever I wanted to be, just be happy doing it. But I definitely had the mindset that if I didn't complete a formal education, get a master's degree, that I would never go anywhere in life.
What were you going to school for?
Engineering.
So in your head, you wanted to go to school for engineering. During school, you become a plumber. Do you graduate?
I did. I got my mechanical and structural engineering degrees, right? And I took a lot longer getting those than the 6-year plan, right? I took some time off to focus on the plumbing, and then I came back. Eventually, I left that small plumber and went on to join the local union. And the union actually paid for the rest of my schooling, and then gave me my first job as a mechanical and structural engineer, working on designing plumbing and HVAC systems for very large high-rise buildings.
So you actually worked in the degree that you had achieved. How long did you do that?
About a year and a half.
So a year and a half later,
I was miserable.
Now you pivot again. What brings you back to the trade itself?
So by that point, I was earning more as a plumber than I was as an engineer. And even though I was new in my engineering career, I knew enough to see what the potential was. And unless I was going to be an engineer for NASA, which, well, anybody could do it if you apply yourself, it wasn't in the space that I was passionate about. And through all those years of putting myself through school, working plumbing, I found that I really loved it. I just enjoyed meeting people. I enjoyed working with my hands. It was a lot of fun. The engineering did not give me that same joy. I like the problem solving in engineering, but that's not what I ended up doing in engineering. It was just a lot of boring stuff.
Kind of maybe felt more like a desk job than anything fulfilling.
It did. And it wasn't a desk job that I was passionate about. So I ended up going right back to the plumbing.
Did you say it was your uncle?
No, just a close friend of mine.
Okay, so that was a close friend of yours. Is that who you're working for then when you go back to it?
Yeah, no, I did not. But we stayed in contact. I mean, we've kept a very close friendship the entire plumbing career and some time before that, right?
What does the apprenticeship in California look like? Do you have to be an apprentice for a certain, like in Wisconsin, you've got to be probably 7 years before you can break out on your own?
You don't, not in California. Now, in the unions, it is required, right? And I will give the union a little credit. That was the best apprenticeship program I've ever been through in my life. I've never seen anything compared to it. It was world class. However, in the non-union sector, it's not required. It's heavily encouraged, right? But not required to go out on your own. Right.
How long were you in the union then? And that's basically where you got all your training?
Yeah. So I think the union probably about 8 years or so.
Okay.
And then non-union the whole rest of the career. When I came back, I left the union. This was right around the time probably of the housing crash. Right. And I was not happy with my job. I continued working the engineering. And then it was for the same union contractor, plumbing and mechanical contractor. So they had me doing a little bit of both. They let me get out of the office to try and appease me and let me get in the field and do some field work. It just wasn't the same. And the housing crash happened and it affected the business sector as well. And we were all laid off.
0809.
Yeah. And again, I called I didn't call. My same friend that got me into the trade called me. And he said, how many days you been sitting at home doing nothing? I said, too many to count. And he said, I'm picking you up. Let's go run some service calls. Right. And when I had first worked for him, he had been in the new construction side of things, right? Residential new construction. And he had switched over to the service side of business. Right. And I said, okay, yeah, come pick me up. I'll help you out for the day. Right. I got nothing else going on. And the wife's yelling at me to go find some work anyways. Right. At least rub some dirt on myself and tell her I tried to find a job. Yeah. So we had a blast. We got to catch up all day and we ran all these service calls. And this was the first time I had ever ran service calls. Right. I think we went to 6 homes or so that day. We were done, I don't know, 2:00. And he was getting ready to drop me off. I go to hop out of the car and he hands me $1,000 cash. I said, oh, I can't accept that, man. I just need out of the house. You made me feel better about myself, right? I'm gonna go hit the pavement hard tomorrow and find a new job. He said, no. I made plenty of money. This is all you, and I'll pick you up tomorrow, right?
Is he like a one-man shop at this point? Like he
was one-man shop. I think he might have had one other kid working for him. I fell in love with it. It was just exciting all over again because at that point I had really kind of honed my craft with plumbing, so there wasn't a lot of challenges. I mean, there's always more to learn. Don't get me wrong there.
At Service Titan, we know running a contracting business is hard work. With our all-in-one solution for the trades, managing your business needs from scheduling to invoicing is easier than ever. Learn how ServiceTitan gives you the tools to keep your business running smoothly. Visit servicetitan.com. Once again, that's servicetitan.com.
I was repeating the same things over and over, just other job sites. And this was fun because I met people, you got to engage with homeowners, right? And by the time you leave, you feel like Superman because you fixed their garbage disposal or you relit their hot water heater. I mean, it's and they're high-fiving you. The wife's happy, she gets a hot shower. The husband's happy, he didn't have to try and DIY and YouTube some stuff to figure out how to be a plumber. It was just very rewarding.
Well, let me stop you there for a second. You said there's always more to learn, but what you're describing is the actual service side of it, being in a person's house, creating the relationship and getting the job done, making somebody happy.
Yes.
But there's a lot more to a plumbing business.
Yes.
Than doing the service work. And I guess I don't want to jump right to the point where you're at now, but you go from helping your buddy, your family buddy in a one-man shop. What does it look like to go from there to deciding to go out on your own and make it into a business?
So he wasn't ready to give me the workload I wanted, right? So I stopped applying at new construction companies.
Wasn't ready or didn't have it? In other words, he wasn't trying to grow, so therefore
he wasn't trying to go. He was super comfortable where he was, and he had the life that he wanted, and God bless him for that, right? I couldn't be happier for him. I'm kind of an ambitious person. I have a problem of wanting more, right? So I took off and started working for all the big franchise corporate home service companies, right? Plumbing and HVAC, right? Picked up both trades. And I spent some time as a service tech, spent some time as a estimator and comfort advisor, right? And more in the sales role, working on building relationships with customers. And quickly I found out that where I really liked to be was in leadership, right? So I became a general manager of several different companies. It was probably the best training in the world for me to later become a business owner. I did not know that's what I wanted to do. I just liked management. And I was very fortunate to work with a lot of different size companies. So small ones, medium size, and very, very large, multi-$100 million operations with many locations. So I got a good experience of all the different growth cycles of a plumber.
Were some of those private equity owned, or were they all?
Some were. Some I'd say an equal amount of private equity owned. So you learn how to deal with the investors and shareholders, and so it was just a good, well-rounded education right into the ownership world, and I didn't realize it at the time.
Well, it was on the job training, and there probably is no better experience, to go back to our initial conversation about like feeling like the college education has to be there. I went to college, but I learned some stuff in college. I'm not going to pretend I didn't, but I've learned so more just in life. Your first job, just going through the motions. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but it's so great to just learn it on the fly. And what you're describing to me is some great experience, but you dropped a little bit of a hint that I think comes through extremely obvious in your marketing now, that you had a little bit of a franchise background in there.
Mm-hmm. I did. So the multi-location, multi-shop platform, right? And in managing, I was managing, I don't know, for some companies up to 10, 12 locations spread across multiple states. And you end up learning to spend a lot more of your time in the marketing world, right? And learning how marketing, larger than just regionally based marketing, right? And so that was great education. I think the best part of the education was that I was very fortunate. I can think of 3 owners who I've asked them, they like to remain nameless, right? But 3 owners, CEOs that were the most impactful mentors in my life, because they would tell me, hey, this is probably the best way to do something, right? But I was still new enough that I wanted to try all these new things, right? And they allowed me to try those new things. Some of those new things cost them a lot of money, right? And they never shamed me for it. They just made me pivot quickly and learn from that mistake. Some of the new things that I got to try are some of the best practices we still use today, right? But I'll never stop being grateful for others allowing me to learn and be creative with their money and
on their dime.
On their dime. And that's a big ask, right? And not many people get that
It
opportunity.
is a big ask, but you clearly earned their trust.
Yeah.
The business owners don't do that for anybody. There was some underlying factor that made them believe in you. So, don't sell yourself short.
Yeah.
But explain to me how you go from working for these other people, essentially, to just all of a sudden flipping the switch and deciding you want to do this on your own, because that's not easy. You're running multi-million-dollar companies doesn't mean you're prepared to go off and start your own.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It gives you a lot of great training. You can watch, you can learn about marketing, you can learn how to industry best practices for service. The value of running well-oiled P&Ls and tracking those. But it doesn't necessarily gear you to running your own business, right? Like you have to have a mindset first off for that, right? You have to enjoy a little bit of pain in your life. But there came a point in time about the last year or so before I broke away where I caught myself not being as grateful, I think is the word I'm looking for. Maybe not. I was saying in my own mind a lot when we would have these large corporate meetings, if these guys just listen to me, this would work out better. And if I was the owner, I would do it this way. And not even that their way was wrong, right? I can look back in hindsight and say, there's nothing wrong with what they were doing. They were doing a fantastic job, right? But I caught myself saying that so much to the people that gave me so much education. Forget about all the wonderful benefits and the money that they paid me and my family. I was very well taken care of. And I made them a lot of money in return and massive growth. I've set all sorts of growth records before, but it was the education they gave me. And like I said, I'm super grateful for it, but I had become ungrateful, right? Or just
maybe complacent.
And at some point I knew I needed to make a change because the owner was still the same nice guy he was, right? How dare I be so rude, right? About that same time, my best friend and a guy that we had worked together so many times over the years, and he's my business partner today. He's all sales side of business. That's what he focuses on. He's customer relations and sales. I'm operations and marketing, right? And we're two opposite personalities, two opposite people. You'd never think that we'd get along. He's very loud, very alpha. I'm a little more reserved. I like data. I like numbers. I like to think about things. He's like impulsive, but we're like a match made in heaven because of those differences.
Yeah, it's a yin and yang business relationship, and typically those are the successful ones.
Those are the only ones that I think are successful, in my opinion, right?
What year is this now?
So this is late 2023.
So this is only not even 2 years ago.
Yeah, not even. So December 2023, my business partner, Greg, calls me up. This is late at night. It must have been 11 o'clock at night. But again, I'm operations manager for multiple locations. I'm used to late night calls. I got to take it. He's my top sales guy, right? Got to take his call. I take it. And he says, put me on speaker. I know your wife's laying in bed next to you. And I said, okay. And we're close. I mean, the guy's we've done all sorts of traveling and vacationing with our families together. So I put him on. My wife, Samantha, loves him. And he says, guys, you two aren't happy. I'm not happy. It has nothing to do with the company. They're great folks. But I'm going to tell you the solution. He goes, I reactivated my contractor's license. Put in your 2 weeks tomorrow. We're starting our own business. This was like mid-December of 2023. Now, Anybody else would say, whoa, let's slow down. Let's talk about this. Let's make a plan. Right. But again, mind you, I'm talking to a salesman. Right. So the conversation went on for about 45 more minutes and he closed us. He closed me and my wife. We were ready to, with no further thought or planning, right, to just do it. And it was the best close that he's ever done on me in my whole life. I wouldn't have changed that for a world. I wouldn't have gone back and taken any more time to think about it. I put in my 2-week notice. We finished out the year. By December 31st, I was out of there. By January 15th, we booked our first call.
Okay, so you've got this business on paper really only at this point, like business on paper, meaning you're marketing it, it exists, it has a name, it has an identity. Who's doing the work?
So luckily I had all the experience, right? It's starting multiple locations, greenfields, M&As and stuff. So it really wasn't hard. I mean, to in 15, 20 days to have completely set up a business, right? And have secured equipment and vehicles and branding.
Where are you getting the startup capital?
Greg and I each put up $25,000. It doesn't take too many people often come to me and say, well, how much do I need to start this? And I go, if you have the knowledge, you don't need that much. So the knowledge and the network decreases your buy-in value, right? If you don't have either of those two things, a large network of contacts, and you don't have the experience, you're probably going to spend a lot more money starting.
Be prepared to burn through a little bit more money.
Yeah. So here's the benefit of my business partner being so sales driven, so customer focused. That's 100% his job. That's all he does in our business, right? Is those two things, is customer service and sales, right? Is all I need to do is market just a few clients. And I know within 3 or 4 clients, he's going to have made enough money to, make us even. And 3 or 4 clients more later, we're going to have built back our investment and then some. And I think we launched pretty aggressively, pretty quickly. We hired some guys real quickly. I think
this is also like Q1 of 24.
Yeah, I think the end of January. So we started mid-January, January 15th. I remember the day specifically. By the end of January, we were $250K in revenue at like 40% EBITDA. Right? Had a couple guys and a couple vans going at that point. And then it just skyrocketed from there. Right. Okay.
You're making all of this sound, in my opinion, you're oversimplifying it. It just can't be this easy.
It is after years of doing it.
Well, that's right? What I wanted you to say. I wanted you to say that Joe Schmo can't come and do this. You had learned from some of the best. Your business partner had also learned from some of the best. And because you had the knowledge and expertise, to your point, it's also why you needed less capital. You came in with the expertise to be able to do this from the ground up more efficiently than someone else might be able to.
Exactly. So where most guys are taking 5 to 10 years to really learn some tough lessons when they're starting out as a contractor in their own business, right? I spent that 5 to 10 years on someone else's dime.
Walk me through this first year then, because let's just call it a year. We'll just round to a year, because we're only in Q1 of 2025 now. You're barely a year old company. You're cash flow positive and EBITDA positive month 1. What does it look like 6 months later?
6 months later, I was having to readjust our financial goals because we had undersold ourselves. I think we set out an 8-year plan. I think we had a plan meeting by January 10th. So 5 days before we booked our first call, we had planned, I'd mapped out the next 8 years for our business and broke them down by quarters, by months, had our budgets set for everything. And I know that's looking very far, but I have to have lofty goals. So does my business partner. It's the journey for us. It's not the money. The journey is what keeps us going. I can't sit still in life. Greg can't sit still. So we always got to be planning the next thing. So by Q2, midway through the year, right, we realized that we were already surpassing our budget for the whole first year, right? I think we had said we'll do 3 million our first year, very conservative number for us, right? And we were readjusting it, and so we set it to, I think, 6 million or something. We said, let's double down, we can do it, because we were already almost at 3 million at that point. At the same time, we were just filling out for a loan to buy our shop that we're in now, right? And I remember the bank lenders, again, because we're under 2 years in business, they don't have a lot of financial statements, they don't have tax returns. So they're saying, hey, we need a 3-5 year plan. I said, here's my 8-year plan. And they called me up and they said, that's way too aggressive. Nobody's ever going to believe that that's possible, right? And I said, well, here's what we're doing now. And they called me up and they said, Pat, you got to tone those numbers down, that it doesn't look real. And I said, but that really is. That's my P&L that my CPA.
That is reality.
That's what we're doing. And we're actually going to double that number. And so like quality problems to have, right? Obviously the EBITDA that we made in the first, in that level, I mean, when you're working out of your house and your garage is your tool room and your shop room, you have very low costs, right? I think we had, we onboarded with Service Titan right away, right? And we had some basic marketing, but everything, we didn't have the overhead that we have now. So our EBITDA has come down to a very reasonable. We finished last year at 27.7% EBITDA on 7.1 million. I think that EBITDA matters more than the revenue, right? I heard it said recently, right, that revenue is for vanity and EBITDA is for sanity.
Well, yeah, and even you've been through the private equity sector. If I don't know what your end game is, and that's one of my questions, is if you're building this for acquisition, private equity is looking at EBITDA, period. And I guess what are you building this for?
So we are gearing it for private equity, but we haven't committed that that's where we're going. So it's easy to gear for that and then make that decision later, right? So if I gear for private equity or even if I gear for like minority events, right, I still got to be geared the same way.
I get that that's the structure of the business, but you said a couple of things. Number one, a bank doesn't typically look at you unless you've got 2 years. And private equity isn't going to look at you probably unless you have like 5 years. Yeah. They're going to look at 3-year revenue history, and that's great. If it's all, 7, 10, $20 million, it doesn't matter what that number is, as long as there's not historical data.
Yeah.
Or as long as there is historical data.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that was the root of my question more is, are you immediately I understand that you recognize the process for private equity, but was that your end game since the beginning here?
I think so. Which is where we had our 8-year plan, which we're currently from the original plan. We're about 2 years ahead of schedule right now. So I could either remodify the plan or be happy that we could accomplish it in 6, which would just put us right about in that great range to be discussing with private equity, right?
Well, what's cool about you and Greg is you also both kind of sound like a little bit serial entrepreneur-y. Granted, you've said, you have some passion in plumbing, but let's face it, when you cash out with dumb money, you can have a passion for a lot of things. And the really cool thing about plumbing right now, especially in the more suburban areas like where you live, is you can grow a really solid plumbing business over the course of, just call it a decade. Yeah. And you can cash out with some nice money, life-changing money. Not that the plumbing business itself isn't providing you a life-changing living, but let's face it, when you sell it, that's really something that can let you really go do something different. And is that what maybe you two are kind of thinking about? Or is it just so immature?
I think that is what we're thinking about. Again, for us, I'm 44, my partner's early 50s, right, Greg? And so we are looking for at some point retirement. The problem is, like you said, we're not good at sitting still. We're both entrepreneurial. So I'm sitting in this beautifully just built studio right now, right? And that's for a whole nother business that's soon to come, right? That'll be servicehustle.com. And that's coaching and sales training, business coaching and sales training for home service businesses. Obviously, we're targeting a smaller level business, right? I'm not going to teach somebody something that I'm not currently doing or have done, right? So I'm not marketing to the big boys yet, but when we get there, we will.
Well, and the people who need the hustle training, which is a good name, by the way, are the people who are just trying to figure it out. You guys have spent 2 decades figuring it out, so why not share the wealth? Because typically in this industry, you aren't sharing the knowledge with your competitors.
I don't understand that either, right? Because listen, I know we're all competitors and we're all trying to take care of our teams and our families and our communities, right? So there is a level of competition, right? But I don't know why we can't share best practices, because it just raises the bar for everyone.
Yeah, a rising tide raises all ships.
You know,
well, to your point too, the fact that you guys grew from 0 to 7 million or 6.5 million, whatever it is, in a year, proves that there's no shortage of work to be done.
No shortage. And we're well on pace. So we just celebrated our first $1 million month in February, right? And we are pacing for our goal is 14.2 this year, right? So double down and maintain the same EBITDA, right? Out of this one shop. That's not counting if we add another shop. We may in Q3, but probably Q1 of the following year, right?
What is the biggest obstacle you guys had in this first year?
There wasn't tons of big obstacles in the first year, right? For us, there was a little bit of impatience on our part. You know, I got to file for a business license. I got to wait 2 weeks for the Secretary of State to issue it. Like, I was very impatient with those things. I think the biggest excitement for both of us, right? Because here's stuff that I didn't know, right? Because like you pointed out earlier, is you learn how to manage and run companies, but that doesn't make you an owner, right? And so one of the fun things that we got to learn, right, was cash flow management, right? And that was, looking back on it, I would have got with the team of financial advisors and CPAs and tax consultants and everybody that I have now, day one, had I known more about this, right? But luckily we onboarded with those people at like the end of Q1. And so they helped us be all ready. I don't think we could have done too much better than we did with our tax efficiency and with planning for things. And they also helped us create a better environment for our employees financially. We already were paying well above industry average in rates of pay, but we were able to tack on some really good benefit programs for them financially. That's something that I wish I'd known more about. But, you know, nobody can know everything, right? And it's exciting to learn something new.
For more info on Patrick and Greg's business, visit MrDrainPlumbers.com. Grow your business with Patrick's assistance through his newest endeavor at ServiceHustle.com.